Hey, welcome to our three-part video series entitled Your Marketing Breakthrough. In this series, we're going to share 8 breakthrough findings that we learned from our church marketing strength assessment. We've had over 2,000 churches take this assessment, and we are so pumped to give you the insights your church needs to reach more people. To our knowledge, this is the first major assessment done on church marketing. Now, the reason we did this is we are literally passionate about seeing the church grow and be healthy. That's why I do what I do. That's why you do what you do, to see more lives changed, more baptisms, more people discipled, and so on. And we did this assessment to see if churches are missing any opportunities. You see, the goal is to help you see your church grow. If you've wondered what you need to do to get a boost in reaching more people, then you're going to love this video series, and I'm glad you're part of it. Now, we know God is the one who builds the church, not us. But if you're like me, you want to do everything possible to take advantage of every opportunity to reach more people with the gospel. Now, right up front, let me just say that the score churches received in this assessment was not a score to determine if they have a good church or a bad church, or to what extent God is moving. It is something entirely different than that. Isn't that correct, Ryan?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, this assessment was pretty hard. So if you're a church leader and you took it and you scored pretty low, it's not a score of your overall church. So in fact, I'll tell you here in a second the average, and I think you might be surprised. So it's really hard to score, but it's not saying you're good, you're bad, or what God is doing or is not doing. It's simply saying, are you taking full advantage of the marketing tools that would be available to your church? So that's really what we're trying to get at. Were churches taking advantage of these? What were the correlations between our findings and church growth? And so I think the churches and pastors, you're going to be really excited to see what we learned.
Okay, so let's talk about those scores a bit. Now, the highest score you can get is a 20. Yep. And they were all yes, no questions. So let's think about that, and maybe you could just flesh out a little bit of what we found when the people began to take the survey.
Yeah, it was 20 questions. And so I might even say here, if you haven't taken the survey yet, stop now, pause it, go check out the survey. But the 20 questions, yes, no, I don't know, was basically how it broke down. Right. So out of that, the average score was 7.6. Okay. So pretty low. So if you're around 7 or 8, you were average, you were normal, okay? You were average. Now, what we asked the churches to identify is, are you currently declining? Are you currently plateaued? Are you currently growing? Or are you currently rapidly growing? So what I want to do is walk through the scores and their averages based on how they identified their church growth. Cool. So let's start with those churches that were in decline. So if you identified, hey, we're in decline or rapid decline, the average score was 5.4. Okay. Now let's jump to those that were plateaued. They say, hey, we're plateaued in growth, 0 decline, 0 growth. Their average score was 6.4. Okay. Now jumping to those who said, hey, we are experiencing consistent growth, their average score was 8.9. And then if we jump to that upper echelon of, hey, we are experiencing rapid growth, their score was 11.1. So if you see all the scores together and kind of the trend that we started to see out of the data. Now we've surveyed over 2,000 churches, and this trend is almost basically started from the beginning, and we've seen it continue on through now. But 5.4, 6.4, 8.9, 11.1. So you can see quickly that those churches that are more effective in these areas of marketing are much more likely to be experiencing church growth.
Well, and what I find fascinating when I look at that trend or have those down here, there really is not a big number gap between literally the low one and the high one. Yeah. There, I mean, the steps to get from where you're at to a rapidly growing church, it's not that dramatic.
Right. And so that's the great news. Yeah. I mean, if you score low, and you can take some time and focus on a few of these items and turn them from, no, we don't do that very well. We don't do kids pre-registration. We don't really have much great photography of our church. We don't, and you can go through the question and say, hey, we're going to focus on this and take this from a no to a yes. Right. I think what the data says is you are much more likely to start seeing things turn around in your church, which is exciting if you think about it. Now, let me also say this. in order to do this right, you're going to have to take some time to focus on it. So you're going to have to, and in fact, inside of Church Marketing University, we have 17 different modules that focus on these things. And each module has about 4 to 8 hours, depending on the topic, of coaching. And so we walk through your teams on how to do this. And so it's really easy to delegate that to team member, volunteer, board member. So that's how it's designed to take these things from no, we don't do these well, to yes, we do this great. So again, that's how you can't just do this overnight, but there are resources out there that can help you in order to accomplish that.
Well, that's good. Well, let's talk about that for pastors, because as you know, more than ever before, pastors and churches are falling into 2 primary categories. So you can think about yourself in this area. Either they're tapping into the digital world and using new methods of communication to see the church grow, or they're doing what they've always done and they're seeing limited growth, if any growth at all. Now, I'm sure you'll agree that keeping up with social media and other technology changes can feel absolutely overwhelming. It certainly isn't as easy as people make it out to be. Does it work? Are churches using these channels, reaching people? From your website to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, email, graphic design, mailers, billboards, t-shirts, word of mouth. I mean, it just keeps going on, and it's hard to know where to put your focus. You end up trying a whole bunch of things at once and not really having any success at all. And frankly, you end up spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you and I, we live in the church world. I mean, I'm a part of a church plant over the last 3 years and in the trenches. So we understand this for pastors. Like, who has time to do all this stuff and figure out all the marketing techniques that you need to be implementing and to implement it all.
Yeah.
So we totally get that. And again, we'll talk more in this video series. That's why we've created this resource called Church Marketing University that you can literally take your entire team through. You can assign different modules to different people, different volunteers. And that's really why we created Church Marketing University as a tool to give pastors the resources they need in order to accomplish all this and save them time.
That is good. That's good. Okay, so let's take and talk about the assessment itself. Let's go back to talk about that. What were the things that you found in the assessment that were really germane to this issue at hand?
Yeah, so the first thing, and we're going to start with the biggest, most lopsided piece of data that stuck out in the assessment, and that's this, is that 86%, almost 87% of the churches that identified as rapidly growing had lead pastors that prioritize connecting with the millennial generation. I mean, that was, again, by far the one thing that stood out in all the data is this. Those rapidly growing churches, the one thing that they were doing really well is that their lead pastor prioritized.
86%.
Yeah,
oh,
86% said we have a lead pastor that prioritized connecting with the millennial generation. So that was a huge point in the data that says, hey, if you want to pay attention to something, pay attention to this, because it's a big deal. So I thought we could take some time, because I know you, in your coaching with the Hardy Group, the Inner Circle, you are constantly talking to pastors about leadership development.
Right.
And I know you've tackled this area before. What would you say if a pastor's saying, you know what, I do need to pay attention to that. I've been wanting to pay attention to that. I need to make some headway in this. What would be your advice to them?
Well, Ryan, that really is a great question, because here's what's happening right now. People are watching this video, and cognitively, they get everything we've just talked about. But it's it's the business of them taking it from here down to here and actually implement it. And one of the things that has to happen is you've got to make it a focus. You can't just say, today, okay, I'm going to make it a focus tomorrow. It has to be something very intentional if you're going to actually be able to move this forward. And then it has to really move to a priority. You can't have a zillion priorities. So it's probably going to bump something else that was a priority.
Yeah.
But if you truly want to reach millennials, you've got to say, I'm going to make this a priority. I don't care if you're a pastor 35 years old, 55 years old, or 75 years old. You've got to make it a priority. Then, of course, you can only imagine what comes after making it a focus and a priority. You've got to put your money where your mouth is. You've got to put budget behind what you want to be a priority. And you do that in your budget anyway.
Yeah.
If you go through your line item, I mean, I can look at your budget and tell you exactly what you see as a priority by the way you're spending your money. So you're going to have, most churches are going to have to do a shift to make budget a priority for this kind of focus to really happen.
Yeah. What else would you say? I mean, what other tips would you have for pastors in this area?
Well, one of the things, this sometimes people gets a little touchy, but you've got to focus young. Now, the minute I say that, you're going to get an older person my age, is going to say, "Whoa, what about me?" And just hear me out on this. You've got to focus young. You've got to focus young at your leadership level. Oh. You've got to focus young on the stage, on the platform. If you're, I saw an article, great article, I think it was in a blog post on Lifeway or something, that if you'll have a 50-year-old person singing a song or a 20-year-old person singing the same song, the 50-year-old person will draw the 50-year-old person in the audience. The 20-year-old person will draw the 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, and so on. Oh. So, and that's a stark reality of life, that you've got to put up front what you want. In the leadership area, you've got to, I want to say it this way. I've got this one church I was working with, and they wanted to reach young, and I'm sitting around this board table, a bunch of great folks, and the youngest, the rookie, was 50 years old. Wow. And so you just say, well, look at us, folks. The youngest one in this room is 50, and yet we want to reach 25-year-olds. So that's a huge piece right there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I would say another thing that I've noticed from our church planting experience is you have to make it where millennials can understand church. Because that generation, unlike any other generation in America probably that grew up before, did not necessarily grow up in church. Right. And so they're coming to the church, hopefully they're coming, and when they get here, they have to be able to understand what's going on. So at Summit Park, we explain everything from worship all the way through so they know what's going on. So if they're walking into your church, you've got to have it on a level that they can get it because they didn't grow up in Sunday school. They don't know all the terms. Right. They don't know all the ins and outs. And so you've got to go back to the basics with some of the language. And I might also add this in what you were saying when you're making people more visible, from your greeters to the worship team to even the speaking team, whoever's up on the stage, you need to capture that as well and show that in your media, your marketing materials. Right. So photography, videos that you're doing, because attracts like. Right. And so it doesn't have to look like you have a whole bunch of, models. I know you were telling me that story.
Yeah. This friend of mine said they talked to a friend who was in a large church. He said, our church really basically has Abercrombie and Fitch models up there singing away. And my friend is going, really? I mean, is that what I've got to do? And you don't. Right. That's not what but you do need to, age-wise, focus on young.
Yeah. And here's another thing I would kind of say is, because sometimes they could hear these discussions and think, maybe their mind immediately goes to, do I need to make the service, like a rock concert, right, flashing lights and cool? And I would say, hey, there might be a place for that, and there's a lot of churches that do that well, but I wouldn't go there first. I don't think, flashy and all that is exactly what millennials are looking for. I think they're much more concerned with relationship. I think they're much more concerned with connection and understanding. I even like to say for pastors to think of 4 words when they think of connecting with millennials, either in person or digitally, and those are these: real, life, people on an adventure. Real, so you're going to talk about real issues, authentic issues that they're dealing with every single day. Right. Life, that your service, your church is the highlight of the week. It's full of life and faith and excitement, and it's fun. People, that it focuses on people, that even your marketing materials isn't about buildings, it's about the people, people's stories, people's lives, people's transforming. And the last one, adventure. That you're going on a life-size, faith-filled adventure with people, and you're inviting people to go along with you. And if you think about that, real-life people on an adventure, shouldn't the church represent that more than...
Should be the model of it.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, you think of the Bible, you think of God working throughout history. What is it all about? Real-life people on an adventure. Come on. Yeah. So, I mean, if we would just get back to even what we see throughout the Bible, right, I think you would naturally connect with millennials. So I think there's a place, again, for all the lights in the show, but I think don't go there first. Don't think, oh, that's what we have to go there for first. I think there's much more important things to tackle.
Well, and that goes to the whole issue that's a high value for millennials, and that's genuine.
Yeah.
This genuine sense that you got real life people on an adventure.
Yeah.
That is so good. You know, another one that comes to my mind is that pastors, church leaders need to intentionally move into what I say, into the way of millennials. And what I mean by that is, you can't just, again, I referenced the cognitive part. You can't just think it and understand it. I would advocate that a pastor needs to, on a very regular basis, maybe on a weekly basis, build something in your calendar that literally puts you with millennials, to be with them, to talk with them, to hear them. Now, let me just note to you, it's not all going to match up with a 40-year-old's thinking, a 60-year-old's thinking, and so on. So you're not going in there, while we're not talking about hedging on biblical absolutes.
Right.
We are talking about going to a segment of people who need Jesus and hear their stories.
Yeah.
Listen to what's important to them. And that will actually strengthen you. That will move you closer to being a pastor who focuses on millennials.
Yeah, and I think if a pastor is in and around that age group, I think you'll quickly find you understand their pain points. You understand what's really important to them. You get it. You may not understand all the things that they're into, all the apps that are on their phone, and what does that mean, but you start to pick up. And like you said, that's so important. Don't just say it. Say, okay, what part of my calendar each week? So it forces you to do that. Maybe, I've heard of pastors that they're in those small groups, or they have millennials in their small groups, and they're nowhere close to them, but they're now doing life together, and how beautiful is that? Yeah. And so now that's coming out in their speaking, because they're doing life and sharing life, so they understand that, and so that when they're talking about a certain topic, they have that perspective that's working into the mix as well. You don't have to use the latest, coolest, hippest, trendiest, verbiage and all that, but just being in and around, you'll start to understand that. And I think that will make a huge difference.
Yeah,
so.
you really will. Another piece that jumps to mind is just to, for example, boomers. I'm a middle boomer, so there's about 10 years younger than 10 years older than me. Boomers are frequently very task-oriented. So you've said it right to the point of put it on the calendar. So a boomer, puts it on the calendar because it's a task. But when you do it, it can't be a task. It can't be something you just check off. It has to be, the word we used, genuine in connecting with that millennial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a boomer, but it has nothing to do with age. It's Boomer Sooner for football. I had to work that in.
We had to do that, didn't we? Oh, man, had to do it.
Well, we're just getting started. So literally, we've just talked about the first of 8 major findings that came out of this assessment of 2,000 churches. So in the next video, we're going to tackle the next 6, which I think are going to have some major breakthrough for churches. So this is 1 of 8. 6 is coming up. 2 through 7 is coming up in video number 2, which you're absolutely going to love. We will see you in the next episode.